Breaking news. Kyiv residents are hurt in a Russian missile and drone attack. 2 people were injured and several homes were destroyed when debris from 20 Iranian-made drones launched by Russia early Thursday was shot down by Ukrainian air defenses, according to officials. The attack occurred just a few hours after NATO's annual summit concluded, during which new promises of weapons and ammunition and longer-term security guarantees were made, but no clear path for Ukraine's membership in the alliance was established. On Thursday, Russian President Vladimir Putin reiterated that Russia does not approve of Ukraine joining NATO. Putin said in televised remarks, it would raise the threat for Russia's security. This would make the world more vulnerable and lead to more tensions on the international arena, and would not increase Ukraine's own security. The United States cluster munitions supplied by the Pentagon reportedly reached Ukraine on Thursday. Bombs that detonate in flight, releasing dozens of smaller bomblets, are among the munitions banned by many nations due to their history of causing civilian casualties. U.S. officials see them as a way to get desperately needed weapons to Kyiv, where they can be used to break through Russian lines. For months, U.S. leaders argued over how to handle this sticky situation. Finally, President Joe Biden made the call last week. The United States has pledged to deliver a variant of the weapon with a lower dud rate, meaning a smaller percentage of the individual bomblets will fail to detonate. Unexploded ammunition is a major source of accidental death on battlefields and in populated civilian areas. Shortly after midnight, the city was rocked by the latest barrage by the Kremlin's forces. Authorities reported 2 people were taken to the hospital with shrapnel injuries. The Interior Ministry reported that firefighters in the capital city put out fires in 2 buildings, one residential and one commercial. It also claimed that debris had smashed into the facade of a 25-story apartment complex. The constant threat of Russian airstrikes has become a depressing part of life in Ukraine throughout the nearly 17 months of the conflict. Meanwhile, reports indicate that Lieutenant General Oleg Sokov, who was in charge of Russian forces opposing Kyiv's recent counteroffensive in southern Ukraine, was killed by a Ukrainian missile. According to retired General Andrei Gurulev, who formerly commanded the 58th Army and now serves as a lawmaker, Sokov was killed on Tuesday when the Ukrainian military struck the city of Berdyansk with UK-supplied Storm Shadow missiles. Sokov's passing has not been confirmed by the Russian Defense Ministry. Volodymyr Motuz, 22, a resident of the 25-story building, cautiously made his way across the floor of a destroyed apartment after the nighttime attack on Kyiv, the sound of his feet crunching shattered glass. The dust was thick on the broken furniture. It was just a boom that I heard while I was in my apartment. When the siren started sounding, I made my way to the basement. He reported that there were casualties, but that everyone who was hurt was still alive. In May, residents of Kyiv were forced to spend their nights in shelters as Russia fired dozens of drones and missiles at the city. Although attacks have slowed down this summer, they can still happen anywhere at any time. Dmytro Lubinets, the head of Ukraine's Human Rights Office, said on Telegram, "It should be explained that each air alarm in Ukraine is like playing Russian roulette. The potential number of casualties and the location from which news of an enemy drone or missile strike in Ukraine will emerge are both unknown at this time." 2 Russian cruise missiles, according to the Ukrainian military, were also shot down. The statement claimed that one ballistic missile escaped interception, but it did not specify how much damage this missile was responsible for. Khmelnytskyi's regional government in western Ukraine said a cruise missile was intercepted over the region, and that no casualties were reported. The regional government expressed their gratitude toward the air defense forces of Ukraine in a Telegram post. 10 people were killed and dozens more were injured when a Russian cruise missile hit an apartment building in the western city of Lviv not too long ago. Heavy fighting is taking place on the front lines in the south and east of the country, and the intensity of missile attacks has remained high throughout the conflict. According to a report from Ukraine's presidential office on Thursday morning, at least 3 civilians were killed and 38 more were injured in the country over the previous 24 hours. Russian forces have fired on 13 Ukrainian-controlled cities and villages in the partially occupied Donetsk region using aircraft, missiles, and heavy artillery. Drone debris injuries in the partially occupied Zaporizhia region rose to 21 on Wednesday, and Russian shelling sparked fires in the city of Kherson. During televised comments made in Moscow, the speaker addressed the media. Putin stated once again that Western arms shipments to Ukraine would not alter the conflict's trajectory. He claimed that Western missiles do inflict some damage but nothing critical is happening to Russian forces. Putin further stated that Western tanks and other armored vehicles delivered to Ukraine have had little to no effect and have become priority targets for the Russian military. He made the sarcastic claim that the Soviet-designed tanks in the Ukrainian army's inventory burn even better when exposed to fire from an enemy tank. The Russian president has said that Ukraine is within its rights to seek security guarantees, but that doing so must not endanger Russia. He claimed that in March 2022, weeks after the beginning of the Russian invasion, talks on a tentative peace deal took place in Istanbul, during which time security guarantees for Ukraine were discussed. Putin warned that unless Western countries accede to Russian demands, Moscow would not renew the UN-brokered deal that has allowed Ukrainian grain to be exported from Black Sea ports. He suggested Moscow might pull out of the pact until the West consents to facilitating shipments of Russian food and fertilizer.